it's a story that calls to me, that taps on my shoulder, and this one tapped me on my shoulder. I'm like, we need to tell the story. Very few people knew about it, but prior to the 40th anniversary of the fire, and 3 years later, people still don't know about it, and that's why this film, I feel, is so important to help educate, enlighten people, not only in the LGBT community, but in the mainstream community as well. Because especially when we fight for equality, a lot of people don't understand the benchmark, where we came from, where our history. But when they see stuff like this and see how the government reacted to this, all these people dying, then they can understand or get a little bit more insight to why we're so passionate about our equality movement.
And I think that's what was striking to me about the documentary, is the fact that it's so easy to forget where we were, and this documentary helps remind us that it wasn't easy, that today we can speak out and we can say, that's against, you're violating my rights. Back then they couldn't do that.
Right, you couldn't do that. In 1973, especially, you couldn't say that you were gay. You could be fired. You could be kicked out of the place where you lived. Your whole world could be destroyed. So, as I mentioned in the movie, you couldn't grieve for your friends or your loved ones that were in the fire, because you might lose even more. So that is also a tragedy. There are a lot of the history that was in existence prior to Hurricane Katrina was washed away. So it's a little bit of a challenge to find some of the documents and recordings of the police interviews and whatnot. So some of it no longer exists. It once existed, and that's a tragedy in and of itself. But it is important for us to find what we can right now and put it on. It was important to me, and put it on screen. It was hard. It was hard to get through it. I mean, it is a heavy material. I tried my best to be at keep arm's length. But when you're dealing with all this mass death, you cannot help but get be sad and be affected by it. And I do grieve for these people, because I feel, after spending so many years with them, that I know them. And now that I know their families, I grieve for them, still. And there was a moment where one of the family members sent me an actual photograph, 40 plus years old. It was brittle. I was holding it in my hands and looking into the eyes of one of the victims. And that moment, I just kind of broke down and cried, because it's just, this is real life. It's not fake. I mean, this was a piece of history. So it did get to me, and it does get to me. But I just had to remember that I want to respect and honor these people, and I had to push forward and tell their story.
And being part of the gay community, sometimes we refer to ourselves as family. And like here, when I come here, I feel like, I'm part of a family, an extended family. So seeing that tragedy on the screen is almost like that's part of my family that was affected.
Yes, it is our family. I mean, it's our culture. I mean, it's, whenever, like today, our transgender brothers and sisters, every time one of them is murdered, that's a member of our community. So we need to stick together. The L, the G, the P, the T, the Q, the I, the A, everything. It's all a family. So when it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. Well, I believe it does kind of remind people that we are human beings. We grieve, we hurt, we're happy. We're just like you. And I think this movie underscores that. That's why it's important when I screen this film at mainstream festivals, because we've screened at several of them, because we want to help educate and enlighten people about our struggles. If, like I said, if people don't understand where we came from, they don't really understand why we're making the noise that we're making with the equality movement. Film Out's one of my favorite film festivals. They've been so supportive of me through my filmmaking career. Almost 10 years. My first film screened here in 2007. I would love to be able to be a part of the 20th anniversary celebration somehow.